You know, I travel all over the globe. Pastor Johnny and I were talking today and to one of the young people at dinner. In my life, I've traveled through over 60 countries in the last 30-some years. When I started, I had black hair, then I got white hair. Now I'm praying for just hair. I could have it. And I just think of all of the hours of fatigue and all of this that actually goes on. And then I come back home and get off the plane, and I come back into the house and want to get on my knees and kiss the kitchen floor because I'm home. And one of my kids will run up and just hug and say, "Hi, Dad." It's worth traveling on those long hauls just to come back and have that, or your wife's arm around you and say, "Love you. So glad you're back." If our human value means so much to us, think of what the divine accolade is going to mean when you hear the words, "Well done. Well done, thou good and faithful servant." That's why Augustine said, "You have made us for yourself, and our hearts are restless until they find their rest in thee." God's made you for a purpose. All the tiny little purposes become purposeful because your life itself has purpose. If you don't have ultimate purpose, all these tiny little purposes are nothing else but ways of tranquilizing your boredom. God's given you a unique calling. Meaning. God's given that to you. But the third thing, He doesn't just promise you a moral framework, doesn't just promise you meaning. For the atheist, it is not there. The atheist has no hope. There's no hope beyond the grave. When life comes to an end, it's gone. It's finished like a vapor. You know, I've just finished my latest book, and it's called "Has Christianity Failed You?" And I talked to people with all kinds of questions about why they walked away from God. And one of the stories, I met a woman in India whose story I'd known and sat and chatted on it. It's a true story. Lovely young gal, fell in love with a young Indian man and wanted to marry him. But the parents told her that he came from a lower caste, not to please go down the rung of the ladder. She pled with them because she said she loved him. Parents would not give the blessing, so they both eloped. It's very interesting. She was willing to violate the inextricable law of caste, which is intricately woven into the law of karma. Just remember that line. The law of caste, which is inextricably woven into the law of karma. Because of a certain karmic previous life, you're born in the new caste. This is the doctrine that is espoused by tens of millions. So the parents said, "No, he's of a different caste." They both eloped, got married. She was posted into another city and went to work there. Days went into weeks, weeks went into months. They were making a living. Met up with another man, quote, attracted to him, stopped corresponding with her husband, communicating with him. He began to suspect something was going on. He said, "Please give up the job and come back. We can't live like this apart the whole time." She said, "No, this is a good job. I've got a good career." So he took a train and went over, fearing some things. Found out it was true. She'd been betraying her trust and told him that she'd met somebody else and wanted to marry him. He said, "Look, when you and I got married, my parents disowned me. Your parents disowned you. We had nobody left in this world except each other. And now you're walking out on me. Please don't do that." He pleaded and begged. Young woman across the table there talking, it would have nothing to do with it. Finally, he said to her, "If you don't want me, I'm going to have to go back. Of course, I can't force you." He went away for some few minutes, came back. He said, "Please do me a favor. I really do love you. I'd ask you to just lie down next to me for a few minutes so I could hold you close and then leave, but you won't let me. Let me just put my head on your lap for 30 minutes and close my eyes and enjoy my nearness to you for just 30 minutes. Would you let me do that? Just let me put my head on your lap." He did. She did. Unknown to her, he had taken a very deadly poison when he had stepped out and died on her lap. Years have gone by. The memory was haunting her, terrified. I said, what was the answer to this? She couldn't get away from the trauma of it, so she went to see a Hindu priest. And he took her astrological chart and his astrological chart and the date they were married and so on, and said to her, I have the answer for you. In your previous life, when you were a little girl, he raped you. And this was now his karma of what happened at your hands. So you don't need to feel guilty about this at all. It was the karma that he had earned from his past rapacious act in the previous life. A brilliant, successful businesswoman across the table who eased her conscience on this by believing that in the previous life she'd been raped by this man and therefore he was getting his due rewards. You know, the human heart longs for some freedom. Freedom from guilt, freedom from wrong, and freedom ultimately from the chains of death. I'll give you this little story and close with my final thought. You know, my father-in-law, my wife's visiting her mother in Toronto, and I'll be joining her next in just 2 or 3 days. I'm holding some meetings there, so we'll be together. But 4 years ago, she lost her father very suddenly. He was 85. From diagnosis to death in cancer, it was 4 months. Robust, healthy, fine man. I don't know if I've known a better man closely in my life than him. The perfect gentleman. Never saw him get into a car first without letting his wife in first. Never saw him sit down before he pulled the chair to let his wife sit down or his daughter sit down. He was the quintessential gentleman. I mean it. And when we lost him and lost in my father-in-law, a man I so revered, my children just treasured him. But he shriveled down in the last 4 months as the cancer began to eat away at him, and he was so distraught because he never wanted to be seen with such indignity. He came down to a bag of bones, and then for a long time even couldn't speak. I went and spent some time with him and told him how much his life had meant, what a light it had been to so many. He was a World War II veteran. Great engineer, worked for Shell Oil all of his career, 30-some years. Churchman, devout elder, godly man, daily with his Bible and his hymn book. And then lost his ability to speak. And his daughters were gathered around his bed before I was on my way flying. I was somewhere literally in midair. Spoke to him on the phone saying, Dad, I'm coming. And as the last breaths were entering his body, he managed to get just enough strength to say these 2 things. I've quoted him in my book, The Grand Weaver. He looked at his wife of 65 years and he mouthed the words, Jean, I love you. And then he lifted his eyes to the heavens and he said this, amazing, just amazing. And he was gone.